Another thing about God's vision, there is a lasting fulfillment that occurs. But many people look at sex as, okay, where can I do my next thing to get the next high, the next feel, the next excitement? God's vision is very different from that. God's vision says when you are sexual with your spouse, there is a long-lasting, tremendous fulfillment that happens. Now, let me try to illustrate this concept of the lasting fulfillment. We're going to pretend that this has been made perfectly smooth. Nothing has ever made a print on it. Okay, it's in its pristine, original condition. Now, what I want to do is talk about this concept of a sexual arousal template. This is an adaptation from a teaching that Dr. Patrick Carnes has put out in his book, Out of the Shadows. But this sexual arousal template is we're all born with this. In other words, we're born with the ability to experience sexual attraction and desire. Remember, that was part of God's vision. We're all made to be able to do that. But when we're born, it's blank. Nothing has made an imprint on it. So we're born with this blank template. Now, here's God's plan. We meet somebody and we get married. Nothing has happened sexually at that point. We get married, and then just as Jacob said about Rachel, I've worked for 7 years, I'm ready to get married and have sex. We get married and we are sexual with our spouse. And when we do, our spouse makes an imprint on our ability to experience arousal and desire. Now, this imprint has been made. Now, at the moment, there's only one thing in the whole universe that perfectly fits into this, and every single little crack and crevice, everything is identical, and it perfectly fills the whole thing. What is the one thing in the universe that perfectly fills it? Right, my hand. Every time my hand goes back into place, it's completely filled. Every fingerprint, every little wrinkle on my hand, it perfectly goes in and fills everything here. When that happens, is this looking for anything more to fill it up? No, it's perfectly filled every time. So we and our spouse together, sexually together, it's perfectly fulfilling each time. That's God's plan. That's the way God designed it to happen. Now, let's talk about the real world for just a minute. Because we live in a world where it is extremely difficult to experience sex the way God intended it to be experienced. We're born, and this arousal template is blank. And again, we're going to envision that I've had a chance to really roll this all out, get all the little creases out. And now we're born with this nice blank template. But because of the world we live in, there are many things that begin to make imprints. Okay? Let's say we walk by the television in the house and we see a commercial comes on, or there's a show on that is modeling sexual behavior. Boom, we see that. It makes an imprint. It may not be extremely deep, but that imprint is there. Now, this right here has kind of a place where it wants this right here to fill it up. And we go along and, now let's say we're 12 years old and we meet somebody and there's kind of that romantic thing, and, now we're kissing, and, there may even be more things than kissing going on, and we do that a few times, and, little imprints are made there. Now, okay, it's 2 weeks later, we've moved on, and we've had 2 or 3 other boyfriends since that time. But, they kind of left their print. And for some people, that very first romance leaves a much bigger imprint than other people. But, many adults will probably say, yeah, there's kind of this little part of me that still always has that warm, fuzzy feeling for the very first girl I ever kissed, or first boy I was ever in this romantic relationship with. And then we move along, and let's say now we're 15, and of course in our culture today, 15, somebody might have a pretty significant, some kind of sexual encounter with somebody, and so that goes on, and that makes another print there. And, There are some times where, we'll be around somebody and something sexual happens and it may make a pretty, yeah. That didn't go so well, did it? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes things don't go very well, and it may make a really deep imprint. And it may even hurt. There may be a lot of hurt and shame and guilt, sadness. Maybe we didn't really even want that to happen, but it did. And it leaves a print, and it can be a pretty big print. Well, now, here we are, we go through, and at this point now we're married, and we are sexual with our spouse, and boom. But guess what? How filled is that experience for us now? What's underneath my hand? Other imprints. Other things that my hand can't get down in there all the way and fill up. So now when I pull out my hand, it made an imprint and it fits, but there are still these other things down there that have made an imprint, and this right here doesn't completely fill that. And that's why so many young couples are having major problems in their relationships, because one or both of them are now looking somewhere besides their marriage for some kind of sexual fulfillment, because just what's going on in their marriage isn't filling it up. And that's a sad casualty of the sexual environment that most of us now are growing up in. God's plan is for sex between a man and wife, husband and wife, to be completely fulfilling, and for people who are able to experience sex the way God designed it, it has a potential to be a completely fulfilling experience.